Hello, video number 4 in our studying of the Odyssey. Today we are going to read about Odysseus and his adventures with the Cyclops. And this episode is actually going to take us a couple of videos to do, so this is just part 1 where they meet the Cyclops. So before we begin, let's just remind ourselves where we are. Remember, here is Odysseus at King Alcinous's court. He's telling us of all of the adventures he's had up until this point, right? He's one stop away from being home, but he's telling Alcinous about all the adventures he's had before that, right? He told us about the Cicones and getting caught in the storm and going off track and going to the Lotus Eaters. Now he's going to tell about the Cyclops. So remember, he's still speaking to the court, so all of this is narration from Odysseus' point of view. Odysseus and his men, after they leave the Lotus Eaters Island, they land on another island, and as they investigate, they discover this huge cave where clearly someone or something lives there, because there's remnants of a fire, there's cheese. You'll see about the cheese. And what happens is Odysseus is incredibly curious. That goes along with his cleverness and his alter ego of Athena, and he insists that they wait inside the cave because he really wants to see what kind of creature lives here. So that's where we pick up with our reading. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, and took some cheese to eat. See, I told you there was cheese. Then sat in silence around the embers waiting. So they light a fire, they make an offering to their gods, they take some of the cheese that's in the cave. I don't know if it's a good idea to eat strange cave cheese, but they were probably hungry. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. So he is now Cyclops coming in, big one-eyed monster. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. Then over the broad cavern floor, he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and he-goats in the yard outside and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. 2 dozen four-wheeled wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred that tonnage of rock from where he wedged it over the door sill. Okay, so what happens is he comes in, he's got his firewood, he throws it down on the ground, and he brings in his ewes. Now, ewes, E-W-E-S, are female sheep. So, and you can see little sheep here in the picture. The Cyclops is a shepherd, and he has a flock of sheep and probably some goats, and that's where the cheese came from. Sheep's milk cheese. So he brings the female sheep into the cave for the evening, but he leaves the male, the rams, and the he-goats outside. And then he swings overhead this huge boulder and blocks the entrance. And Odysseus says here the boulder was so huge that even if you had 2 dozen wagons with 4 wheels apiece, with heaving wagon teams, with teams of horses pulling them, those 24 wagons could not have moved that tonnage of rock from where he put it. So that's just to really make clear how big that boulder is. That even if there were 24 wagons there with their horse teams, they could not have budged that tonnage of rock. Next he took... let's not do that. There we go. Next, he took his seat and milked his bleating ewes. So he milks the sheep. A practiced job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling, thickened his milk then into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip in withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls, cooling until he drank it for supper. So this is just a description of how he milks his sheep. He gives them their baby sheep to nurse for a little bit, then he milks them, then he separates the milk, makes the cheese, drinks it for dinner. Okay, and so he's sort of doing his evening chores. Okay, he returns to the cave, he blocks the entrance with a huge boulder, then he does his evening chores, making the fire, doing the curds in the whey, milking the ewes, and when he spots the men, which he does right here, he asks them who they are. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare, he saw us. "Strangers," he said, "who are you, and where from? What brings you here by seaways? A fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea?" So he asks them, who are you, and where are you from? And then he says, what brings you here? Okay, a fair traffic? Are you here for some legitimate reasons? Or are you wandering rogues? Or are you pirates who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folk by sea? So, epic simile alert. We have the Cyclops here. In the course of asking who they are, he's comparing them to pirates, right? Or he compares pirates. Are you wandering rogues to gambling with dice? Are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice? So are you those type of pirates who gamble with their lives like people gamble with dice? And what he's doing here, what Homer does here, is makes us see what are the similarities between pirates and gambling. It's risky. Okay, that's a risky way of life. If you win, there are big rewards, both as a pirate or as a gambler. But if you lose, there are big losses. And you have to sort of be a careless type, right? He says you cast your lives like dice. You just throw it away to either gamble or be a pirate. So there's an epic simile there when the Cyclops asks who these men are. So Odysseus, he now has to respond. We felt a pressure on our hearts in dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. But all the same, I spoke up in reply. So he's going to answer the Cyclops. Let's see the answer here. We are from Troy, Achaeans blown off course by shifting gales on the great South Sea, homeward bound, but taking routes and ways uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus. The whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. It was our luck to come here. Here we stand, beholden for your help or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. So he introduces himself. He says, we're from Troy, we're Greeks, okay? Achaeans means Greeks, but we're coming from Troy. We've been blown off course, okay? We served under Agamemnon. We were part of Agamemnon's army, and everybody knows how he destroyed Troy, okay? By some luck, we've ended up here, and here we stand, and we need your help, or any gifts you can give, because as you know, in ancient Greece, it is a custom to honor strangers. And we've talked about this hospitality idea, that if a stranger shows up, you're obligated divinely by the gods to take care of them and help them. And in fact, he even says, if you don't be careful, Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. So if you don't treat us right, you could upset Zeus. So he invokes the custom of hospitality. He appeals to the Cyclops saying, you better watch it. You have to observe this custom of hospitality, or you might displease the gods. Let's see what the Cyclops has to say about that. He answered this from his brute chest, unmoved. You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere telling me, mind the gods. We Cyclops care not a whistle for your thundering Zeus or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. I would not let you go for fear of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Okay? So he basically says, gods, I'm not afraid of Zeus, okay? We're more powerful than Zeus anyway. I'm going to do whatever I want, okay? And by the way, his name is Polyphemus. That's the Cyclops name. He looks like a Polyphemus, don't you think? Okay, so he blows this off and says, I don't need to follow Zeus's rules. Don't you know who I am? I'm more powerful than all your stupid gods put together. And then he asks another question. Tell me, where was it now you left your ship? Around the point or down the shore, I wonder? Okay, so now the Cyclops asks, where's your ship, huh? He thought he'd find out, but I saw through this and answered with a ready lie, and Odysseus lies. Their ship is down waiting for them. They've just come to investigate, but Odysseus lies to the Cyclops. My ship? Poseidon, Lord, who sets the earth a-tremble, broke it up on the rocks at your land's end. A wind from seaward served him, drove us there. We are survivors, these good men and I. Okay, so obviously he doesn't want Odysseus doesn't want Polyphemus to know that there is a ship, because the monster might go destroy it. Okay. So what happens next? Neither reply nor pity came from him, but in one stride he clutched at my companions and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies, to beat their brains out, spattering on the floor. Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion, everything, innards, flesh, and marrow bones. His response to this is to scoop up two of the guys and eat them. Okay? He caught two in his hands like squirming puppies. Epic simile alert. He compares the way the Cyclops grabs onto the two men like someone would try to pick up squirming puppies. Okay? Oh, squirming puppies. Yeah, until he beats their brains out, spattering on the floor. Then he dismembered them. He pulls their bodies apart, rips them apart, and eats them. Okay? Gaping and crunching like a mountain lion. So comparing the way the Cyclops eats to the way a mountain lion would eat. Gaping and crunching, mouth open, teeth crunching into the bones and all of that stuff. We cried aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus, powerless, looking on at this, appalled. But Cyclops went on, filling up his belly with man flesh and great gulps of whey, because nothing goes well with man flesh like a big glass of milk. Then lay down like a mast among his sheep. And then he laid down among his female sheep and fell asleep. Okay. So he's asleep now. Odysseus, he sees an opportunity. My heart beat high now at the chance of action, and drawing the sharp sword from my hip, I went along his flank to stab him where the midriff holds the liver. I had touched the spot when sudden fear stayed me. If I killed him, we perished there as well, for we could never move his ponderous doorway slab aside. So we were left to groan and wait for morning. So while the Cyclops sleeps, Odysseus draws his sword, that should say sword, and almost stabs him, but he realized that the entrance to the cave is still blocked by that giant boulder that none of them can move. And if he kills that Cyclops, he and his men will be stuck there to die. Okay, so I have to fix that spelling error, so you get to watch me fix that spelling error. I'm a little behind the scenes here. Maybe I'll edit this out. Draws his sword. There we go. All right, from current slide. Okay, so he draws a sword. He realizes the cave is still blocked. He's about to kill him, but he decides they can't do that because then they'll be stuck in there forever, so they have to wait until morning. So here's morning. When the dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world, the Cyclops built a fire and milked his handsome ewes all in due order, putting the sucklings to the mothers. Then his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men to make his breakfast, and whisked away his great door slab to let his sheep go through. But he behind reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground, then stillness. Okay, so in the morning, Cyclops wakes up, he does some more chores, milks his sheep, eats a couple more guys, and then leaves with his flock. But he does put that boulder back in place behind him, so Odysseus and his men are still trapped there. I don't know, this is an image from some Odyssey video game of some kind. Okay, so they're still stuck in there, but Odysseus has a plan, and now I pondered how to hurt him worst, but if Athena granted what I prayed for. So now I had a plan how to hurt him, if only Athena would grant what I needed. Here are the means I thought would serve my turn. So here's what I saw in the cave that I thought would help me. He's going to get MacGyver right here. You guys even know who MacGyver is? You're probably too young. A club or a staff lay there along the fold, an olive tree, felled green and left to season for Cyclops' hand. And it was like a mast, a lugger of 20 oars, broad and beam, a deep sea-going craft might carry. So big, so long, so big around, it seemed. Okay, so he has a plan because he sees a large fallen olive tree that's in the cave, sort of sitting there on the floor of the cave, this huge length of a tree that was probably meant for, like, the Cyclops was going to use it for like a walking stick or a staff. Okay. So he uses this. He says, now I chopped out a 6-foot section of this pole and set it down before my men, who scraped it. Okay. So he chops out a big 6-foot piece of this tree and gives it to his men, who sort of carve it down into a smooth thing. Then he says, and when they had it smooth, I hewed it again, that means I cut it again, I trimmed it again, to make a stake with a pointed end. Okay, so he's turning this giant 6-foot piece of wood into a 6-foot wooden stake. Okay, with a pointed end. I held this in the fire's heart and turned it, toughening it, then hid it well back in the cavern under one of the dung piles in profusion there. Okay, so he sticks the end of it in the fire to harden that wood, to get it really sharp and hard, and then they hide it in the cave and wait for Polyphemus to return. And it says they hide it under one of the dung piles there. So dung is poop, and let's just hope it's sheep poop and not Cyclops poop. Okay, so they hide it under the poop. Now came the time to toss for it. Okay, now to decide who would help him. Who ventured along with me? Whose hand could bear to thrust and grind that spike in the Cyclops' eye when mild sleep had mastered him? As luck would have it, the men I would have chosen won the toss. 4 men, and I made 5 as captain. So it was time to toss for it. They had to choose the other 4 men who would help Odysseus do what he planned to do. And what did he plan to do? To grind that spike in the Cyclops' eye, to stick that in his eye, and poke his one wheel eye out while he was sleeping, when mild sleep has mastered him. I got lucky, and the men I would have chosen myself won the toss, the sort of, I don't know if they did rock, scissors, paper, or flip the coin or something, but he got 4 strong men, and I made 5 as captain. And so they're going to, 4 other men are chosen to help Odysseus carry out this plan of stabbing the Cyclops in the eye. Okay, so here's your questions for homework. You ready? Pause and write them down if you need to, and you might want to go back and watch the video or review the notes you took. Why do Odysseus and his men stay in the cave and wait for the Cyclops? How does Odysseus try to reason with the Cyclops at first? Identify and explain one of the epic similes in this selection. Why doesn't Odysseus kill the Cyclops while it is sleeping, when he has the chance? And at the end of the selection, what is Odysseus planning to do? Remember, your answers must be written in complete sentences and include embedded and cited quotations from the original text over here. All right, see you next time, Cyclops Part 2.